If you are new to the church or looking for a church, it is great to have you. Please, there's more to church than what happens on Sunday. Come and see us in the connections desk, and one of us would love to connect with you and have some time to hear your story. But today is all about, it's our first time we've tried this, and I'm sure if you've been to other churches, it's been slicker and the whole thing, but this is our time where we're going to have an opportunity to give above and beyond our donations, but focus towards mission. And so today we're going to talk about the different ways we can do that or make the pledges for that. But to introduce that, first of all, I think you're going to be amazed to find out all the things that we do get involved with as this church. And one of them has been a deep dive engagement into Kenmore High School, which has been quite a miraculous process as that's happened. But that's predominantly become through one person, Julie Savage, who works at the school. And Julie's finally been able to respond to an invitation to come and join us. So please welcome up Julie today. She's going to share a bit about what we do with the church in that school. So bless you, Julie. Thanks for hanging around again.
Well, good morning, everybody. And it is certainly good to be here with you today. Happy Father's Day to all the dads and father figures. And as Pat said, I do work at Kenmore State High School. I'm one of 3 guidance officers. But I'm also a regular member of Mitchelton Presbyterian Church, a wife and a mum to 3 amazing daughters. But there's also a few other things I'd like you to know about me today. And the first thing is I really like coffee. And I'm hoping or thinking some of you might be able to relate to that. But that's one thing. I really like coffee. The second thing is that I am mission and community minded. And I'm always praying for opportunities for God's people to be present and a presence in the community. And the third thing, if an opportunity presents itself, I tend to be the kind of person that reaches out and grabs hold of that and very thankfully receives it. And so part of the work that I do at Kenmore is to build and grow programs and opportunities for young people who for various reasons just need that little extra bit of support. And often the need is just so much bigger than what we, the school support team, is able to give them. So now, because I really like coffee, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, on my way to work, the moment that I spotted the big coffee flag flying out the front here on Brookfield Road, I became quite a regular at one table. And so it was while sitting in the cafe, thinking about the day ahead and the kids, their needs, I just took a moment to sit and listen to the conversations, the many and various things that I could hear that were happening here, and all of the gifts and the talents that people were speaking about. And I remember one morning meeting Pat, and it was in a conversation with him that he said, and he asked the question, "What do you need? What do you guys need?" And with that, kids, their needs, Pat, Kenmore Church, snap. And I said, thank you, Jesus. And from there, today I'm able to stand here and to share so many of the ways in which Kenmore Church, you, the Pays team, and so many individual volunteers, through the practical implications of your faith, have been working in the lives of many of these young people and families over the past 4 years. And so I'm going to just take you through some of the work and the service that's been happening at the school. The Lunch App program is the idea that when young people are out and about at lunchtime, some of them feel very isolated. It might be just through negative peer interactions and social anxiety. We have other young people, of course, who sometimes get themselves into a bit of a pickle through struggling to regulate their emotions, particularly when they're playing a high-stakes game of handball. And so the Lunch App program is essentially the Pays team and other young people, young adult volunteers, coming alongside those kids at lunchtime And just being there, having conversations, modelling those social interactions, and being present. And that has been extraordinary. We often get young people coming up and saying, are those pink vest people going to be coming along today? So all of those pays and the volunteers that come along for the Lunch Chat program wear these pink vests. It was the only colour that was really left over from all of the other vests that we use, and Liam particularly liked pink. So you can't argue with that. So pink was the vest, and it's been so well received. We also have the Girls Shine program. And the Girls Shine program is for targeting young girls who, for whatever their circumstance, we feel that they just need that extra bit of love, and people to tell them that they really are, they have a purpose, that they're valued, they have worth. And so we've been really blessed with volunteers who have come every week, very diligently preparing programs for those kids. And often when they get tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, we've got this program for you, they say, oh, Mrs. Savage, I really don't want to do that. And I'll always say to them, will you come along the first time? And if you want out, we can have a conversation. And those kids are the same ones that say, can we keep doing that after they graduate? So how great is that? We have Strength and Balance program. Again, just really a result of a very authentic, casual conversation with one of the lovely members here, with her work with the seniors here doing the stretch balance, the sticks, and we thought what a great opportunity for kids with disabilities at our school to be involved in something like that, where they perhaps don't often get to participate in a lot of sport stuff. And so that's been a really great thing, and just, again, another opportunity for those relationships and those connections. And our PAYS team, all of these things are involved across a number of these programs where they help out some of the volunteers. The art program is an example of a conversation with another member of the congregation here, in which just really love to create and draw. And so the question was asked, is there some way that I might be able to be a part of helping young people? And of course we said, thank you, that would be amazing. And so that program has started, and that's for our young people who really do struggle through exam stress. And it's a way that they've been able to develop some skills just in relaxation and mindfulness. So that's been fantastic. The Next Gen Year 7 leadership program is a relatively new thing, and that's come about through the generosity of Kenmore Church in purchasing not only the faith-based curriculum that you're running here with your young people, but also the values program, so that sits along and runs parallel to that. And so we were able to advertise that to our Year 7 students. And the response was so overwhelming with the limited places that we were able to offer in the first instance. Those places were consumed within the first 25 minutes. And so we've, thanks to Sandy reaching out, we've been able to now offer a second program, which will start next term. And essentially that's a values program whereby young people think about leadership, but more importantly, just thinking beyond themselves. So it's about impact locally, but also globally. So that's been really great to have them thinking about their impact in this world beyond themselves through the frailty of humanity. Food donations. I don't know who you are, but please know that those of you who've been generously donating food, it's really the heart of that stuff that families and young people in all kinds of circumstances are just fed. And if it wasn't for the generous donations that you guys give us each week, there would be kids who would go without lunches, and families who would just struggle through the course of life when things happen, through death, through loss. We're able to say, hey, look, let us just take care of you guys for a bit. And so that's a way in which that has greatly impacted our families and our kids. Future Connections. Future Connections Christmas hampers. We'll go for the Christmas hampers. That's, again, very well received through tears of families who were really stretched, particularly continuing ongoing impact from COVID. And so to see their faces on the collection, they know where it comes from. And so there's much gratitude to those of you who gather, who donate, and put together those amazing hampers at Christmas time. The Future Connections is, and again, I don't know who you are, but I know there are a number of you who put your hand up to say, I think when Pat perhaps mentioned it to you, to go along and to, again, work alongside young people considering different career options, to speak to them, to answer their questions, and to mentor them. That's been a great additional presence that you've had in our school community. The school work experience placements, there's two things that sort of piggyback on this. There's this one, and then there's the mentoring. And we do have a lot of young people who we send out to do all kinds of work experience placements. But there are some of our young people whom we know, again, in the work experience program, probably just need that extra little bit of grace, that they're not always going to get it right because of their circumstances. They may not be able to get there always on time. And one of the really valuable things and the contribution has been the work experience placements through One Table, where not only are they getting that experience, but they're also getting surrounded by people who actually genuinely care about them, who really love them, and who go above and beyond to connect with those kids, and who have mentored them. And one particular fellow that I have permission to talk about was named Oscar. And I remember Oscar coming in as a very young Year 7 student, and through circumstances out of his control, was just in a very hopeless place. He could not see a future when you talked to him about it. He lacked the capacity to care for himself. And I remember after learning he spent 6 weeks of the Christmas school holidays completely alone in his lounge room, he said to me, "I just exist, but I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure for how long." And so it was through that connection, through that work experience and mentoring, that he's about to graduate now for his diploma in event management. And yeah, that's just a really true testament to the impact that people have certainly had on him, and God's provision of those circumstances and situations. So in a school where the gospel message may not be able to be spoken and shared, I am reminded of a verse in Matthew 5:16 where Jesus tells us, "Let your light shine before others, and that they may see your good deeds and glorify Father in heaven." And I guess this is what I see happening through the dedication and service of Kenmore Church, the selfless contributions and compassionate support, how it reflects the love and grace of Jesus in ways that are deeply meaningful. And as with the story of Oscar, the impact of demonstrating Christ's love through action extends far beyond the years that our students attend this school, and not only touches their lives, but the lives of their families. So today I just want to say thank you for the incredible work that you do and for the light that you do bring into our community. I give thanks for God's goodness to us and for his many blessings. And I do pray that we continue to seek and serve him and work together to uplift and bear witness to those around us. So thank you and blessings to you all.
Thanks, Julie. Fantastic. Can we pray? Just reach out our hands and pray for Julie and the school. Father, it's true, without this single woman, that point of contact, so much of this wouldn't be possible. So we thank you for Julie and what she's done, her openness and her intentionality. Lord, we thank you for the school nearby us and the blessing that we've been able to be there. But Lord, I thank you for this church and the relentlessness about their generosity and time and money and all those things. Father, I pray that among all this that we've talked about, that your blessing would be upon the kids in that school. That's what we care about. The ones that walk past here every afternoon. Lord, may the blessings that's upon this house be upon that house. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Julie, for joining us again. She's going to have to duck out now and do some Father's Day things. It's great to have her. All right. We're talking about mission today. And the Missio Dei, we could, if we want to have some gravitas about the term, we can just put it in Latin. You know, the mission of God, the sending of God, it can mean, in that God sends. He sent his son, Jesus, into the world. Jesus sends us into the world. How do we do that in a Western culture, what has now become essentially a secular culture? We can't pretend that Australia is a Christian nation. Many who are here have come from Christian nations. And Australia did have the premise of that in the beginning, but pragmatically, we are a secular nation. So that makes churches a missions outpost. We are all being sent. Everything that we do here is missional in that sense. So where do we take it from there? What does it mean for us to be living our life, doing it in the way that we've been called to do it, and to set aside effort and time and generosity for mission? Many of us would be tempted to say, well, I'll wait for a break in the traffic, let the kids go and the income to come up and the assets to be there. Maybe that's my time to get involved in mission. But Jesus saw things a little bit differently like that. It wasn't a matter of money and convenience and time. It was a heart thing. He says in John 4:35, don't say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes. Lift them up. Look out. I dare you to come here at 3:14 every weekday afternoon and look at the mission field that walks past this church. The kids from Kenmore High. It's incredible. Lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. They're ready. And there's never stopped in our culture being a readiness to accept God, eternity, salvation. Church is up for grabs. It's very questionable in our society's psyche. They're asking hard questions about what we do as church. But Jesus they like. Salvation they like. And so it behoves us to create new wineskins about delivering that gospel. And so today is really talking into the different ways we do that and how we can all play a part of that. And I just want to frame it around Acts chapter 1 verse 8 where Jesus talked about mission. And he gave us, the strategist in me loves this because it gives a pretty clear framework how it all works. But he said, you'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. We're going to pause there a moment and just go, okay, is that my experience? Have I received that power yet? Am I aware of the overflowing fullness of God in my life? Because when the Holy Spirit comes, it results in the next bit. Because you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and all the earth. It's the Spirit himself that fills our tank and fuels our mission. And so just as much of our time is spent investing in filling our hearts as it is in talking about mission. But when we do that, we'll witness. A witness is purely someone who tells the truth of their testimony, your story, your experience, your knowing of Jesus. And a person with an experience like that is never at the mercy of somebody with an argument. All you need to do is tell your truth. But where we tell that truth, how we tell that truth, will be in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and all the earth. So I see 4 clear zones there. I'm not sure whether Jesus meant that way, but I can see it crystal clear. He was talking to them in Jerusalem. It's like zone 1, the streets nearby, the people that you bump into in the streets, that you lock eyes with in the supermarket, the people you know, the kids that walk past school. Go to Jerusalem. But then go beyond that into Judea, your home region. And we have a home region, Kenmore, Centenary, Moggill, Corona Downs and so on. That's our Judea. Samaria, they're like you but they're different. So it's like, you know those people in New South Wales and Victoria? They're like us but they're a bit different. That's the way they would see them. Sumerians, we're all human, we both breathe, but those blues, they breathe a different oxygen, don't they? And so it's just saying, the ones that you don't normally want to like at state of origin time, go to them. Then beyond that, zone 4, the ends of the earth. Everybody else, other cultures, other people groups, and so on. And so the way we can approach each of those zones, you can be as mechanical as I am, or you can just be fluid about the whole thing. It just depends how you roll. But there are principles in mission, and some of them are more or less highlighted depending on where you want to activate your missional life. So let's start, and I want to use this verse to bounce off and talk about the different zones that God's given us as Kenmorites, as Brisbaneites and Australians and so on. First one is our Jerusalem, our local streets, our doorsteps. As I said, hundreds of teens are walking past, the press of people at the supermarket, all these people, they're our local people. Now, as I go through them, you'll see this barcode up on the screen. What that's going to do is just take you to a page on your phone, which is purely a pledge page. It's anonymous. It's not going to take your bank details or your credit card. It's going to give us an indication as God speaks to you. It's going to give you the option of saying, oh, to that area, to that zone, I'm pledging this amount. And then we've got really till the end of the year for that money to come in. But it will go into a separate bank account. But if we get the pledges, then we know what we can budget for in our planning days, which start tomorrow. So it's just helpful that as many of us as we can give us an indication today what our pledge and where it might go. So our local streets are our Jerusalem. And the principle that at play there, because it can be overwhelming, it's like, I'm supposed to go to my neighbours, but my neighbours don't like me because I don't mow the lawn enough, or they don't like my car or something. You know, they get offended at me. So that's not going to work so easily, but I have an engagement with the people down the gym, you know. So we find within our local area there are people, and we start to see there are some that God opens the door with and some that I can't have that relationship with. So what we do is we do what Jesus did. I see what God is doing. I say what God is saying. I work where God is working. And so we're not called to everybody, but God gives us to some certain people. There's a connection there. There's a likability there. And so we can work to that natural pathway that God gives us. So we work where God is working, and don't get guilty about where he doesn't seem to be working, but press in where he is. And so for us as a church, as a group, where God's working, obviously, and it's been there since before we started, there was always an emphasis here that we were going to press into kids and youth. It's vital that this next generation coming through have strong representation and a huge investment. So we over-invested early in staffing kids and youth. We've gone way beyond what we should have done, but you gave generously and we've been able to do that. And that's opened up avenues now to get into the school at Kenmore High. If we hadn't have done that, that wouldn't have been possible. But because we'd already built up the resource, as soon as Julie said, can you come in? We come in like a flood. And so involved in that is our youth work that happens every week in the church, but every day at the school through the PAYS team, who are missionaries from overseas who have come in, who we house and feed and give a car and do all that kind of stuff. And this is being incredibly fruitful. And you might think, well, but we're not getting to preach the gospel in there. Well, we can here, and the bridge between here and there is only about 200 metres. And the pathways to the gospel, there's many steps on that path. And it starts with likability, value adding, the fact that our presence is a light in that school. We become trusted, we become known, we become an asset to that school, that we're building into their kids values, leadership. Because I know with the temperature out there in our streets is that parents are worried sick about their kids, Christian or not. They're worried about values, they're worried about all sorts of stuff. And if we can add value, and we're known as a people who add value to their kids and give them some sort of moral compass, that's massive in our culture. And so that's where God has been working with us. And so that costs us about $35,000 a year just to do that. And I think that's a great investment. But you've got to understand, mission is expensive. Mission is risky. Some mission stuff works and some doesn't. And we don't know until we give it a good red hot go. But this is working and it's doing great things. So anyone who feels led to invest in that, please just use the barcode. And you can invest in many areas. You just reopen the barcode and you can say, I want to give $1.50 to this and $10 to that. You can do that. Or $100,000 to this, or you can do that as well. Feel free. I dare you listen to God on that one. So that's our strategy there, is to work where God is working. Not to push on something that is just our idea, but to work on what's God's idea and what he's opening up. The next one is Judea, the region outside of that, the natural geographic boundary, where it's just sort of our tribe, it's our people like us. They wear maroon. It pains me to say that because I have to wear blue at State of Origin time, but you know, I'm an adopted Queenslander. This is the hill I'm dying on. You know, so our people. So there's a natural geographic region about this. Now, when it comes to mission, this is where it's changing now. As I've said many times, Christendom is dead in Australia. It is globally, but it took a while for us to catch on in Australia. That this idea of Christendom, and Christendom is essentially where state and religion are sort of joined at the hip, where the moral code of church equals the moral code of society, where there's an expectation that religion has a place in our culture and the government will make room for it. So back in the day, they would allocate lots of tax benefits or land and say we need to have a church on every corner and so on. So that assumption now is long since gone. probably since the 50s and early 60s. But the baby boomer generation who grew up in faith under that have tended to carry that Christendom mindset on. But as the baby boomers are slowly coming out of work and such, we're seeing that the effects of Christendom are going away at the same rate. And so we need a new way of doing church. Building a church on the corner, just doing a church like this, is no longer adequate. You can't do everything in one local church. Autonomous church, where this church becomes its own empire or whatever it is, however you view that, doesn't work anymore. You can't do it. And so you need to think in terms of an ecosystem, which is a bit of a word of the day. A healthy ecosystem. So you think about building the church, not a church. And so we may have representations like this, which for people like us is comfortable and nice. We want to come, we get fed, we worship, we connect and so on. That's awesome, and we won't be losing that. Thank God. But this isn't every expression of what needs to happen on a Sunday or through a week. We need environments that are fiercely evangelistic, annoyingly so, scarily so. Places where you probably wouldn't be that comfortable, or some of us really would, and we're longing for that. But you can't do it all at the same time or in the same place. So you need expressions that are happening around the place that are expert at that. And we're tapping into those different ways that are working right now. I've met a guy a couple of weeks ago, and Liam and I are talking with him about how they do that. He started a church for non-Christians. You wouldn't enjoy it. People can interject. They can ask questions in the middle of the message. What do you mean by there's only one God? Right? That wouldn't really work here. Don't do that. I've prepared a message. I don't like deviating too much, But in that environment, that's fantastic. And so they find all sorts of ways of getting non-Christians in a room and saying, well, you want to hang around a bit? We're going to do this thing called church. But it's cool. You can have a coffee while you have it. Hang around. So that wouldn't really work here. And what they do is not enough for them. Because they built a church in 12 months of non-Christians of 200 people who a year ago weren't saved. I don't know whether you've noticed, we aren't doing that. But we need to do that. So we need to create spaces like that. But join together at the hip in an ecosystem where we're feeding them, they're feeding us. When they need the retreats and the discipleship, they know where they're coming to. If they want to retreat or to gather with a whole bunch of Christian people for maturity and mentorship, they know where to come. We can go, we can come, we can do all of that. And there are multiple expressions of that need to happen. That's healthy church. And it's an ecosystem now. And I think that's where we're going. It's certainly where this church is aiming strategically. And I think the word's getting out, as we're going to see in a minute, nationally, this is going to become the thing. Where denominational walls disappear. We don't label ourselves by denominations and brands and fancy logos. It's about what God's doing in a healthy ecosystem. And so in that natural geography, for us, Kenmore, Centenary, Moggill, Corona Downs, Karalee, Kedron, there's a natural geography where we can work together and have multiple forms of church that feed in with centralised administration. It's cheap to run, much cheaper to run, and all the money goes to ministry and mission. That's effective ministry, and I think that's where it needs to go in the future, and it's certainly through a lot of prayer and experimentation where we're leaning as a church. Does that mean you're going to lose anything we have now? No, it just means we're going to build a bigger ecosystem, and it's going to be healthy, and it's going to be fantastic. So that's the hill I'm dying on, and it's the reason we actually started this church was to get that sort of thing going. So that's really exciting, and the movements are starting to happen there already. As steps towards that, we started Alpha this year in a whole upgraded way, because Alpha is an evangelistic, attractional environment like that. So we're running that right now. Sandy Bickerton is running that, and you're doing a fantastic job. And so we're getting about 20 people now coming, give or take 2 or 3 each week. And those who are helping lead that, we're hoping that they learn how to do that, get a heart for that, and then go out and do that in a group setting in your homes. So run missional small groups. They're created for evangelism, not created just to open the Bible and pray for each other. That's good, but that's not missional. That's inward, not outward. Starting home-based groups that exist to bring people in and share the gospel and so on. So that's going to start rolling out, God willing, next year. And we'll also do local plants. So a local plant means we might do a pop-up church. We might do this radical evangelistic setting. And those who have got a heart and capacity for that can come and join that, but also come back here as well. So you sort of have the best of all those worlds together. So we're sort of planning and budgeting to have that begin to happen next year in some form. either a pop-up church in a cafe, something like that, or a church revitalisation, where an existing church says, can you come and we'll join forces and, use our property and do this radical new thing. So something like that will be happening, God willing, next year. So if you've got a heart for that, and I know many of us really, really do, and the giving has already been coming in for that, that is going to be, it's going to carry an expense with it. We need to staff that. We need resources and equipment to do that. So please be a part of that. Number 3 is the national picture. The Samaria, the Blues, the Victorians, God helping the Western Australians. What about them? Now, not every person and not every church is called to have any sort of impact like that. And it's unusual for them to do so. For an odd reason, at the moment, we have been called to do that. That is a door that's actually open to us. And I've been fairly quiet about that because it's predominantly been because of the different ministries I've been doing around the place. But the strategy that started all this was what I've just described to you. This ecosystem idea of multiple formats, church planting, networks, all that sort of thing, that radical idea came from the same question I asked Julie about the school. What is it that you need? You put that into a community and say, what does this community need? It needs all those expressions of Christianity. The inward, the outward, the upward, all need to be happening. But then you ask it as a nation, what does the church need? And the strategy there is to follow the pain. What do you need? Well, you're answering that question. Where's the pain coming from? And if you look at the Australian church, there's pain going on. It's a crisis. It's nothing less than a crisis out there on a couple of levels. One is leadership. The other one is the churches are closing at 5% per year. 500 churches in Australia are closing every year. And we don't have that many, right? So to lose 500 a year is catastrophic in one sense. In another sense, I think it's the shift that we need to have. Because the old way of doing church, it's just not working anymore. And the result of that is those churches will end up becoming unviable. And that leaves room then for the new model. But the pain that comes from that, there are salaries, mortgages, there are people in fellowships all over Australia who are suffering the pain of transition because their old way of living is dying. And they're not aware yet of the new way that's coming. And so they're living in this constant tension and liminality of being between two worlds. And it's very, very uncomfortable. And so the idea that we've sort of come up with here of the ecosystem, the multi-site arrangement, is answering the question here as much as it is for the rest of the country. And so it's brought attention. They're looking at us saying, how did you figure that out? How are you doing that? How's that working? I go, well, we're just on the way. We're just trying to. And they're just really saying, can we try with you? Because we're in a lot of pain. And I'm not talking individual churches, I'm talking state movements. So since this organisation, we kicked it off a few months ago called M4 Australia, which I'll explain. We kicked off and put our little flag up. Movements from all over Australia. So if you can picture in each state, Church of Christ, of course, like us, Baptists, Pentecostal, Lutherans, Seventh-day Adventists, Wesleyans, have said, we want in. We don't care what the denomination is called. This thing that you're doing is the answer to what we're doing. Can you help us with that? Can you train our leaders to go and plant other churches? We're doing it anyway. We might as well let the whole country do it. That's really the mentality that came behind it. And so M4 Australia, what that is, it came from a connection with a man I met from Norway called Oyvind, who's going to be preaching here in a few weeks' time. Oyvind is a world changer. But he was just a guy, he started out just doing what I'm doing. He's just saying, I've got a church, we need to plant more churches. So 15 years ago, he came up with an idea based on these 4 M's of mission and master and multiplication. He said, I'm going to train church planters. And whoever wants in can just get in. That's turned now from Norway, which is the most secular, cold relational climate there is, much like Australia. 15 churches in his own area grew in Norway, in his own area. That became 15 nations. And it's now close to 400 churches have taken on this idea in Europe. We met, and after he prayed, and then he let me know, and he said, I've prayed, God needs to speak to you. We want you to start this in Australia. And I went, I've got time for anything like that. I'm flat out dealing with Kenmore. And he just said, well, just pray. I hate it when they say that. It's like, can you pray about starting a church in Kenmore? No, I don't want to pray about that. I'm busy, you know. But God uses his outside voice. And I prayed and I felt led to take this thing on, even though I don't have time. And we certainly didn't have the money. And I went to our board, our elders, and said, look, This is what I sense God, and very gracious. They said, well, look, if you can measure the time away and this thing can fund itself somehow, we'll give you a little bit of time to go and just see what God's doing. And so the rest is sort of becoming history now. And M4 Australia is an organisation that's come out of this church. It's come out of the heartbeat. It wouldn't be possible if you weren't who you are. I've got to tell you that. If this wasn't a generous church, if you didn't release, first of all, me and then the others who are sitting here right now who are going to be planting churches or being on teams, if we weren't who we are, M4 would not exist. They came to us because of what we're doing here. And so it might have started because of my strengths or whatever. It's not going to continue that way. And so this thing, it's going to cost us some money. It's going to cost someone some money. I'm seeking donors from all over the country right now, which is harder than you'd think to do. But it's got a budget of around $300,000 a year, and we're powering now. We've got about $1.50 in the bank, so we're rocking, you know. But Lee and I, we're committed. We'll just do what the funds allow us to do. It's not going to be a burden on this church. But I know some of us in this room have a nation-sized mentality, and they're wondering, what can we do in mission in Australia? If I crystallise it all down, I couldn't find anything better for mission in Australia than to plant new healthy churches where Gen Y and Gen Z and the generations coming below, we recruit them, we envision them, we give them all they need, we train them as teams, not as individuals, and we release them to do a new form of church that's never been seen before. That's what we're doing. In 10 years' time, this is going to be a book, I know it. It's just going to be an amazing story. And we get to, in faith, say this is what we're doing right now. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? And I don't know how this has come about other than that God's got a plan and he hasn't told me the rest of it yet. But if you want to be part of that, come and talk to me or flick on the barcode. I'd love to give you an in-depth conversation about how to be involved in that. So that's what we're doing between Alpha and church planting locally, church planting nationally. That's a big deal. Finally, the fourth zone, international. Every other country, is there something we can do? Thankfully, there's been people in this church who, for the longest time, have been investing into other cultures and other countries. We have Lani Van Dolson, who's done an incredible job with Hope Behind Bars, Jeff and Karen Hales with Shalom in India. There's Droplets in a Stream, which a few of us are involved in Africa. There's Rays of Hope in Africa. And then there's this thing called Compassion that we bought into early. And Compassion's been an amazing thing, and you'll probably know that a number of us just flew back in from Indonesia, where all our Compassion kids that we sponsor are living. And we got to see a whole bunch of them. And Compassion was amazing. The trip was amazing. And with overseas mission, you've got to apply a mindset, I find, because there's no relationship normally. There's no connection culturally. It's a new culture. And so what you've got to do is I think, tend to invest where there's fruit. Trust where God's already working. Find the fruitfulness and start there. And that will normally lead you straight to a relationship. I know in Africa, when we started there, it was. I can't save 1 billion people. I can't change a culture. I'm not called to do that. But we can be called to change one person's life, one name. And so that's where the fruitfulness seems to come. And with Compassion, there's no attempt to change a culture. When we went to Indonesia, we can't. Why would we want to change a culture? They're quite happy with the culture of that nation. They don't want to be like us. But they're good people. And when we got to see them, and if you are sponsoring a Compassion child, and we sponsor, before we left, it was about 120. There's a lot more now because when we got there, sponsored a whole bunch more. And next week, there's going to be an opportunity for you to sponsor more people as well. I've got a goal of 200 in my head, and churches smaller than ours sponsor 200 kids, so let's rock that one. But when we go, if you've ever had any doubt as to the effectiveness of that money, don't have any doubt. I've never seen such a well-structured, well-organised, fruitful, effective use of Western finances as what those guys are doing with Compassion. The kids who are benefiting from it, it changes their life. You cannot believe the change. They have nothing. And when they get to be schooled, they get to be part of a local church, come to faith, be educated, have health care, all these sorts of things. What that does to set them apart from their culture as far as provision is immeasurable and way beyond what you're spending. And if you want to spend something on international mission, I have no doubt that Compassion is a great way to do that. We'll be going there as often as we possibly can. But to sit in the room, and for many of us, we sat on the floor with our sponsor children in the dust. And you realise we were protected from COVID. we have these polarised views. Oh, it was a scam. It was all this and that. You go over there and you listen to what happened with COVID in a culture that doesn't have what we have. Every house that I went to had lost one of the spouse or family to COVID. They just died. They were dying on the streets. They had the Delta variant there, and it was a real deal. It wasn't the cold and flu, right? It was killing people. And they've just lost half their potential to raise a family. And so in one family, for example, it was a father. He had 2 daughters, thankfully, were sponsored. He had a stroke, so he only had use of one side of his body. His wife had died through COVID. What hope does that man have? There's nothing in their house. They invite us to come and look through their home, and there's nothing in there. There might be a chair or 2. That's it. And we're so, I don't know whether I could call it humbled or humiliated, because they're not dissimilar to us in any way. They laugh like us. They cry like us. Their emotions are healthy. They're human as anybody else. And it's so darn unfair that there's no reason why they're in poverty and we're not. It's just they haven't had the opportunities. And I haven't quite seen it that way before. Normally you think work hard, good old white Westerners, we work hard and you make your way out. They don't have that opportunity. But compassion and sponsorship gives them that opportunity. And to see some of them go from that to become medicos, doctors. And the response of their heart is from the overflow and thankfulness. They give straight back and say, all that God's given me, I'm giving straight back into the lives of others. They're not going off and trying to raise their own $1 million now. They're living for other people. And there's much, and I think come next week and hear some of the stories of people who went along. But one of the stories that really relates for me to this is a woman pastor I met. I was surprised that culture allowed female pastors. And I said, tell me your story. And she said, I would love a husband, and I'd love a husband who would do this for me, but I don't have a husband. And I said, where is your church? She said, it's up here in the country, in the rural areas, and we're embedded in an area that's basically in the possession or the control of a terrorist group that you would know from the news that flies planes into buildings and overtakes nations. That's where they're based, in Indonesia. And she's got a church right there. And those groups come and they raid their area twice a year at least and take their possessions, try and shut their church down, do the whole thing. And there's this woman running a church, and it's going great. And that's not the story. The story is she was annoyingly happy. It was frustrating. It was frustrating because I didn't know the backstory. But she would be continually laughing and happy and joyful. I think she must have $1 million in the bank or something. I said, why are you so happy? She said, before I tell you, here's my associate. She's a female pastor as well. And she was always happy too. And then the last little minion of the 3 was their spiritual daughter. And just overflowing, contagious joy. They laughed at everything, every minute of the day. And so I called them minions because they went like the minions in that cartoon thing. I thought it was hilarious. Until I realised it wasn't just happiness, it was raw joy. And I thought, where is this joy coming from? And she said, you've got to understand, we are so aware of what we've had to put aside to do what we do for God. And the connection between the tension we feel because we're sacrificing without regret brings a joy that comes from the awareness of what we've put aside. And that stopped me because I know what happiness feels like. I feel happy when I buy a new app or I get something shiny or something new happens in my life. Oh, I'm happy for a moment. Let's do that again. Dopamine hit. That's not joy. Joy comes from knowing a connection between what I've been prepared to put aside. I've made a sacrifice. I've done without to do a greater thing. And that tension you live with, and it brings thankfulness. It overflows. If you're not joyous, I wonder whether you've ever given anything away, whether you've ever put anything aside. And this broke me. This was like, you're blessing me more than I'm doing anything for you now. You've just taught me a lesson that no Westerner could ever teach me. The joy of putting something aside for God's people. And we could all do that. In fact, who could do that more than you and I? We're in probably the most wealthiest culture or culture type on the planet. Disproportionately. People like us are few on the planet. To much who's given, much is required. And we can look at that negatively or look at that as an opportunity. That we're stewards of the wealth that we have. And we can set some of that aside. And we can flash a barcode or we can invest in a person, we can write a compassion letter. And we can understand that cost, whatever that cost is. But I can tell you, the greater that cost, the greater that tension, I guarantee you, the greater will be your joy. Because you've done something for someone else. And you begin to realise what sacrifice feels like. And so today, the process is really that let the Lord speak to you. There is no compulsion, there's no expectation. But for the next few weeks, we'll sort of make the opportunity, we'll put the barcode up. But especially today would be helpful if we get an indication what people would like to give to. And this is over and above our weekly giving. Don't stop what you normally do, please, because that runs the machinery around here. This is over and above. This is to fuel mission. So, but don't feel guilty about that. Let it come from the overflow of your heart, what you feel God would have you give in the next calendar year, so from January 1 through. So we're looking now predominantly for pledges, and then in the weeks to follow, somewhere between now and Christmas, feel free to begin to put those donations in. If you look at the website there, the Partners of Promise, that's got the page that gives detail on all I've talked about, and you can pledge straight away, and you can also donate. So it gives you the link to how to donate, either through FPOS or through direct deposit, and that will be recognised in our system about where that's going to. And we set that aside, and we'll budget as to how much we can give to all these things. So that's between you and God, and there's more stories will come out, particularly next week. We also have Sarah McCutcheon from who's responsible for writing all the material that goes into the school. She'll be here preaching. She's a powerhouse woman. Do not miss next week at church. So there's a lot going on. God is on the move, let me tell you, and He wants to have us all involved in that, all having the privilege and honour of putting something aside for God. So let's pray as the band comes up, and we'll let the Lord do what He does. Father, we just thank You for the honour of being part of this church, this amazing thing at Kenmore. I've never met a more faithful, more generous group. I just never have. It's just an incredible thing. This is what it looks like when Jesus builds a church. So, Lord, I'm thankful for it. I'm honoured to be part of it. Lord, will You speak to us? Will You place on our heart, Lord, a direction, an amount, without compulsion or guilt, but just as an overflow. But, Lord, let it be something that challenges our faith of what to give for Your causes, knowing it's fruitful, knowing it changes the world. Father, thank You for the opportunity to experience that. Lord, now we just choose to give a sacrifice of praise.